Hey everybody, David J. Murphy of Around the Lens. I had the opportunity to sit down with 4 sets of filmmakers from 4 short films that are all being premiered at the Indy Shorts Film Festival in Indianapolis, Indiana. These 4 sets of filmmakers talked to me about their shorts, what went into the making of them, and I decided to compile them here into this one special episode. So I hope you enjoy the episode. I hope you get to see the shorts at some point because they were all very interesting and entertaining. So that's it for me, and hope you enjoy the episode. All right, it's David J. Murphy of Around the Lens. I'm here with another filmmaker interview, this time joined by the musician, filmmaker, and storyteller, who's the subject of the documentary Tomorrow's Too Late, Dylan Holloway. Dylan, thanks for being on the program.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to the chat.
Absolutely. You know, I saw the film, and it deals with, I think, some really important, heavy subjects, but I think it does so in a way that's really both engaging and relatable in many ways because, you know, I think we all deal with ideas and, you know, the concept of identity, right? So talk to me about this film and kind of what's all about.
Yeah, thank you. So Tomorrow's Too Late is a story about my music, and basically, for your listeners, I grew up in a body that I didn't understand. I was, in my mind, a guy born inside a girl's body, and that made no sense to me growing up. But I basically, the only way I found to protect myself was to create this musician bravado and character. So I was a female, a quote unquote, moved to London, was making music. I built a fan base. I was doing all the things that I thought would bring me happiness and success. And then by the time the pandemic came around, I was left with myself every day, isolated, still looking in the mirror, knowing that inside I was this guy in the wrong body. Mm-hmm. So the story begins the night before I start taking testosterone because I come out as transgender and then go on this journey of transitioning from female to male. And the focus is really on me as a musician because I built this whole career and identity on my voice. And right there and then I was about to put that all on the line to risk it for authenticity because we didn't know on the other side what would happen to my voice and whether I'd be able to sing in the same way and keep the same fan base and musical life that I'd had before. So the documentary covers that story. So you get to see up close and personal the transition of a person and also metaphorically the idea of finding your voice as well as physically.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I found that very interesting because you do focus a lot on voice specifically because that's a big point of the film is that your voice changes because you're transitioning from female to male. So you're going from this naturally high-pitched voice to now a lower tenor. And kind of you talk to me about the struggles there, both personally and also how you conveyed that on the film.
Well, the personal struggles actually came from the desire to have done this so long ago in my life. Like you've seen the film, so you know there's a childhood clip of me, I think on my 5th birthday, and I've got a little birthday card and I'm looking at the camera and I read it out loud and it says to my youngest sister, and I look at the camera and I say, but I'm your youngest brother. So for me, the personal struggle was I had lived with Dylan inside me forever in a body that was my previous name, Lots. And then when I came to come out and transition, I was still like contending with the idea of like not wanting to let part of me go because I was holding on to it for safety, knowing that I was going to transition somewhat in public because we decided to document the process with the idea to share it with the public afterwards. So that was like a personal struggle for me. And then like as a musician, the whole idea of like risking the thing that brings you joy, risking the thing that brings you an outlet, risking the thing that also at that time was like my only financial income too. It was like putting the whole identity that I had was up for grabs, and we just didn't know how it was going to unfold. So the documentary, like it was happening in front of us rather than behind us. You know, often with directors, they have all of the pieces, like they know what they're going to go and film and capture, but we were working in reverse, not really knowing what was about to transpire.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, with regard to like the idea of filmmakers and sexual identity, you know, there's a long history of, I would say, musicians who have, you know, bridged that gap, or I would say have had different sexual identities than what's the standard norm. So, you know, I think of like Freddie Mercury, right? You know, obviously a homosexual musician, and, you know, there's many others whether they're gay or straight, that have, demonstrated or exuded sort of effeminate behavior from the
Mhm.
male side, or, vice versa. So, I just want to know from your perspective, do you find kinship any of these fellow musicians? And are there any other trans musicians out there that, have also, I would say, transitioned in public, or that you sort of see as maybe either inspirations or as fellow, I would say, members of this group who are going through this process?
Sure. I mean, so for me, growing up, David Bowie was a big influence in my life, not only because I really enjoyed his music, but also because flicking through my dad's record collection and seeing a picture of David Bowie on the front, like seemingly to me, this guy wearing a dress, the man who sold the world. And I was like, right, okay, so if this guy can be wearing a dress and be sort of playful with gender and identity and femininity, then maybe, and he's celebrated for it, maybe music is a place that I can go and be celebrated for also being a bit, like in my mind, peculiar and being a bit like outside of the norm. And people, like Freddie Mercury, who you've referenced, and like Mick Jagger and Mark Bolan, who are all sort of like glam rock wearing heels. Like for me, although I didn't identify that way, because for me it was so like the idea of gender and sexuality like being two very different things. One is like an identity, self proclaiming, like how you identify about yourself, and then later along the line sexuality comes into play, because then how do you identify sexually interested in someone else? So like they're separate conversations. So I aligned with David Bowie in a way of like, right, if you can be weird in music and be celebrated, maybe I can be weird in my own way. But then later in my life, and earlier in my life, I never saw trans representation, especially trans masculine representation, because, there were a few trans women in films and in media, and oftentimes they were also berated or they were sort of spoken about in a derogatory manner. So it was something that I didn't actually align with to begin with. I was like, well, that's not me. But it took me quite a while to understand that it was me, but it was in a much lesser presented part of the community. So for now, I don't actually know many other trans male musicians who definitely, I don't know, transitioned in public. There's a guy in the UK called Noah Fintz, who is also a trans guy who transitioned, I think, before making music. So again, it wasn't someone I was able to look up to at the time for this. So it's kind of something I did quite in the dark, which is the beginning of why we made the documentary in the first place, because there were no research sources or research for me to be able to draw upon. So I wanted to be able to provide that in the future for other people.
Yeah, and absolutely. And, that goes to the point, like, I had never seen anyone transition as part of a documentary or really anything. Like, it's something you hear about, I would say, after the fact, but not
Mm.
usually as people are going through it. Or I never sought out that kind of media myself. But, obviously, to be enlightened by this kind of story that you were going through, it was found that were really interesting. And I want to know from your point of view, it seems that the idea of transitioning, while still something that is very much, not say controversial, but I would say still something within that many people rally against, right? That many people still have, discomfort in dealing with, but has since become, I would say, more accepted thanks to people like Elliot Page, right? Who's,
Yeah, yeah.
a major actor. So in your mind, have you felt that the idea of transitioning has become something that's more widely accepted? And how has your transition been, at least with regard to how people have reacted to it? So like fans, followers, have you felt acceptance? Have you, found more difficulty in life because of this? What's kind of been your personal perception of the transition process?
Yeah, I mean, I can only speak as like a 30-year-old trans person who, and I wouldn't want to speak for the entire trans community, but from where I stand, like I would say that it's become certainly more prevalent that more people are trans than we knew of before. And I think that's not because more people are becoming trans now, because that's not really how it works. I just think
Sure.
it's in the same way that like there are certain things, you go back through history that you feel like you can't talk about and it has to be something secret, like back where there were like secret gay clubs for guys to go and hang out at, when it wasn't like legal, for example.
Sure.
So I think it's more prevalent now because there's more of an understanding around it not being something that's wrong, and it's just the way some people are born. But I
Yeah.
think with that there is also then you're faced with like the rest of society deciding whether they think it's acceptable or not. I think we're still in that position where we're deciding whether this is acceptable or not, in the same way we were with queer and gay people many years ago.
Sure.
Which is sad, because if you look at how times change, you see the queer community progressing, and how, like, we now look back at gay marriage and think, well, of course that should have been allowed to be a thing because people just fall in love and it's okay. So
Yeah.
I hope that in the future people will see that trans people are no different than anyone else. They have just had a very different life experience. So I personally haven't faced an awful lot of backlash, but I think that's because my whole ethos as a person is to promote positivity and kindness. And, if I ever encounter people who are cruel on the internet, or, send me hateful messages, my first instinct is to reply to them with some kind of kindness or love, or like education. So I'm hoping we're going in the right direction. And that's why I think our film was so important at this time. And we came to America a bunch of times to share the film over there. And I know that it's not been a lovely political landscape for trans people right now. So it was nice to be able to share a positive story at this current time.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk a little about the actual film itself. Talk to me about kind of, you said you wanted to document your transition process because there wasn't a lot out there. And obviously this film takes place over the course of many years, documenting that process. Did it start with just basically you and a cell phone doing, selfie videos, or did you hire a film team? Kind of like, how did that whole process go with regard to actually, capturing the footage and editing it and all that stuff?
Sure. So the first thing happened, I literally stood in my kitchen one morning and I put some bread down in the toaster, and I was just tapping my fingers thinking, like, this is a once in a lifetime story. Like, I know I'm going to do this. I'm going to start next week, and I feel like it's something that I would like to capture. So maybe I'll call one of my friends. So I called a best friend of mine, April Kelly, who is a filmmaker. She's a producer. And I just called her with the idea, and I was like, look, I have this thing it's going to go through, and I wanted to call it transpose, because obviously in music that means to take a piece of music and turn it into another key. And I thought it was so clever. But at the same time, we were just like, okay. So she immediately was like, well, I'm going to jump in the car, man, and I'm going to be there tomorrow, and we're going to start filming. So we did start the project super slapdash, as you've seen. Half of it's on iPhone, half of it's just on a Sony, and we were sort of shooting from the hip with what we had. So she came down to my house in Cornwall, where I was staying because it was the end of COVID. So I was back around my parents. So we decided to maybe capture an interview of those guys as well. But it was all very like, let's just film everything we possibly can, and then at the end we'll see how to put this together. So 2 years into that process, which was already longer than we thought we were going to be, we made like a sizzle. We made like a trailer for the documentary, and I sent it to another friend of mine, Hannah Shipley, who's a producer, works for Mark Huffam, who's the guy behind Napoleon and House Gucci and stuff. And I just wanted her opinion. And she wrote back to me and she was like, dude, why didn't you tell me about this when you first started? I would have loved to have made this with the guys from the beginning. However, I actually like the way it started and the way it was just iPhone and the Sony, because I think if we had started with a big film production company, I don't know whether I would have felt as comfortable to be as candid in some of the interviews I did, because when your listeners see the film, a lot of it is me alone in my bedroom with my iPhone having like a very self-confessional moment and being in tears. So I think if I had been faced with lights and cameras and people behind, like, I don't know whether I would have managed to get to those spaces. So I think in hindsight, it worked really beautifully to have the first 2/3 of this film be so intimate, and then the last expand when we did finally bring them on board, along with an editor and a director, to capture the final third and then to put it all together. So I think it actually ended up being the perfect experience for the film.
Okay, great. No, I think it lends itself towards the authenticity of the film, and I think probably had you had that production crew, it may have been a little bit too slick,
Yeah,
like a Netflix docudrama or documentary,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
So, okay, awesome, great. Well, good luck at the festival, and with the film. I hope it does really well and gets you a lot of great attention. Before we say goodbye, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if any of your listeners have been interested in what we're talking about, I would love for them to come and find me on my social platforms, which is Dylan and the Moon. That's my artist name. So you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, any of the music platforms. Indie folk, singer-songwriter, play as part of a band in there as well. And if you're interested in the film, it's called Tomorrow's Too Late. We are yet to excitedly going to be partnering with a streaming platform later this year, but I can't say much more about that. However, if any of your listeners do happen to be in London over the next few weeks, I'm unsure if they will be, but if you are, we're screening in a London cinema until the end of August called the Arsene Cinema in London Bridge. So, yeah.
Awesome, great. Well, we'll definitely make sure to let people know about that, and hopefully they come check out the film one way or the other
Mhm.
whenever it's available. So it's awesome. All right, well, Dylan, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it. Have a great rest of the day. And for everyone else, this has been David Murphy of Around the Lens. I'll see you all in the next one. Bye, everybody.
Cheers, Dave. Bye.
Hey, everybody, this is David J. Murphy of Around the Lens here with another filmmaker interview. I'm joined this time by Jonny Durgan. Jonny is the director of the film G.S.W. Jonny, why don't you tell about yourself and your film?
Well, my name's Jonny Durgan. My short film G.S.W. is screening at various festivals coming up. Tomorrow it screens at the Indy Shorts Festival in Indianapolis. And it's about two paramedics got to deal with a gunshot wound victim. The GSW is an acronym for gunshot wound.
Hmm.
And he's on the stretcher there, kind of bleeding out, and they're just kind of, just trying to stabilize him. And then the call comes on the radio that there's been a school shooting, and the description matches the guy on their stretcher. And to make matters worse, the one of the paramedics is a child at that school, so everything suddenly gets thrown up in the air. And how do you react to that? Are you a mother or are you a paramedic? It's kind of a nice little kind of duality of the role there. So yeah, it's quite a stressful 7 minute long short. It is a short, and but I feel like a lot happens in that 7 minutes. So it feels, to me at least, it feels a lot longer than that.
No, absolutely. I mean, in concept, it's very simple, right? It's two paramedics basically in the back of an ambulance. The whole thing takes place in there, but there's a much larger outside world that these two characters are contending with, to include obviously the real world, which is, the element of surprise. And where did the story come from itself? Was it something you had or something you experienced?
Thankfully, I've never experienced anything like that. But my mum was like a nurse for a while in an ER department and things like that. So I grew up hearing a lot of stories about medical pressure situations, that kind of thing. So she had to deal with people who are in like vehicle accidents and motorway pileups, and even like people being beaten up, all that kind of thing. So um, we had like a lot of, well, not a lot. She mentioned a few things in passing growing up. So when it came to thinking of like a stressful situation, I think my mind naturally went to medical situations because that's what I've heard a lot about, and I felt like I had a bit of kind of prior knowledge about what it must be to be a medical professional. And on top of that, my son was starting school, so I suddenly had all these parental anxieties about leaving my son at the school gates and hope he's going to be looked after properly in somebody else's care. So I think all those things subconsciously, because I didn't really set out with that in mind, but my wife kind of unpicked my brain after this film had been written, and I just felt like some of that stuff must have kind of come from all those subconscious anxieties that were coming out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You choose an interesting subject, which is school shootings, right, and whatnot, because it's much more prevalent here in the United States than I think it is in England, right? I mean, I would imagine it's at a lower rate there, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I can only think of one that's happened in my lifetime, and I'm 41 years old now. But it's something that we don't really have to think about, and I think that's what kind of fed into the story, really, because if you're a paramedic in a situation where there's a mass shooting, that never happens. For most people, they would never even have to deal with that. So suddenly having that to deal with is something that you'll be very familiar with. The procedure of that isn't very front of mind for people. So I think that particularly was something that I thought would reveal a lot of character traits and things like that, because there's pressure situations and then something like that, and it's suddenly like, what on earth do you do? So I didn't really write it for it to kind of make any political statement. I didn't really think it'd be showing it anywhere other than the UK. So kind of when it's been shown in the US and people have kind of told me how they felt, I feel like the US audiences they kind of watch it completely differently from what the UK one audiences do, because it's a very real prospect for people in the US, and how they would react to that situation. I mean, everyone's come up to me, particularly parents, that said I would do the exact same thing, even though a lot of events kind of overtake the characters. it just feels a lot more real and present for US audiences. But like I said, it wasn't a particular choice to write that. I just kind of it's just a consequence of the film doing so well in various festivals. Yeah,
Absolutely. And I think, that's relatability is probably why it's done so well, is that, we can all see ourselves in a similar position, right? Do we do the right thing, or do we do the what feels right?
yeah,
What
yeah,
kind of decision do we make there? And I mentioned I did a short film that very much kind of played with that same basic premise, wherein you have someone who's wronged and they have the opportunity to take the revenge on that wronged person, or they're the wrong person, on the person who wronged them.
yeah,
And what do, right? Do they follow their Hippocratic oath? Do they,
yeah,
or do they get their revenge, right?
yeah,
And so, we see what happens in this, and I won't reveal it for those who get the chance to watch it, but it's interesting. What decision you make? Is there a right decision? Is there a wrong decision?
yeah,
And I think there is, but I'm not gonna, necessarily say what it is, because then it'll reveal too much. But I think, um, yeah, I think that's something that we all think about, or we fantasize about, right? It's kind of
yeah.
like plays into that, fantasy. Like, oh man, I sure wish I could have that decision, have that opportunity to make that decision.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the kind of deliberate decision to be in an ambulance rather than a hospital room is because over the radio you hear kind of bits and pieces, and like you said at the start, there's a whole other event kind of happening off screen that when you're in such a small space, kind of you jump to a lot of conclusions on limited knowledge, and you fill in a few gaps that you probably wouldn't normally fill if you're in like a hospital room, for example. So the isolation and the choices you make with isolated knowledge, it kind of just seemed to be a natural fit, really.
Yeah, absolutely. You shot in a very small space. Talk to me about some of the considerations and difficulties shooting in this space, and also what did you shoot with?
We shot on the Raptor camera, and it was really kind of the space informed the style a little bit because an ambulance is so small. You can't put like a tripod down. You can't do much with the lights. But to say there was a challenge, I don't think it really was because we knew that going into the shoot. And if you look at kept looking at the work of Paul Greengrass, because particularly Captain Phillips, because those kind of camera movements are just very fluid, and you're picking up things almost like I think he had a documentary background, and it definitely shows in Paul Greengrass's work. So we kind of embrace the space really, and embrace the restrictions really, and by doing that, we kind of a style came to the fore a little bit with it. So um, we didn't really have time to do a lot of takes either. So we're really just letting the actors play out in front of us, and we just caught what we caught in the moment, really.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. That's, pretty much how you have to let it go.
Yeah, yeah,
Whatever happens, happens. There's not too much like, doing a lot of framing or whatnot. It's just, put the action in the front of the camera so I can see it and see the actors acting.
yeah, for sure. And luckily we had such brilliant actors that everything was very kind of straightforward, really. And Rory, our DOP, he's super experienced. He's done features and with high profile features. I think just before he did our film, he'd just come off doing Eternity with Miles Teller and Callum Turner and Elizabeth Olsen. So he was somebody I leaned on an awful lot for his knowledge and how to do these kind of ways of doing things, because we only shot for one day as well. We had to get the whole film in one day. So we had to kind of hope that everything came together. And by having an experienced crew and an experienced cast, thankfully it really did. So yeah.
That's awesome. It's great. So what's next for you? Is this going to be something where you want to maybe turn it into a feature? Although I don't know if that necessarily would be possible with this short, or is there other projects you're working on?
I have other things that I'm hoping to make, but I didn't really think of this as like a proof of concept or anything longer. I kind of just did it as a short really, and even like the time length being 7 minutes, it kind of just revealed itself in the edit really. I kind of roughly the pages count was about 9 or 10 pages and things like that. So I kept it as a self-contained story. I didn't really feel it needed anything longer than what we actually got in the can really. So um, yeah, I don't think I'll make a feature out of it. I think I've got other things to do next if this does well.
Absolutely. No, I think, there's an element of this that would lend itself toward, I would say, a larger maybe series, a television series. I mean, medical drama is extremely popular, so you can easily see this as being like a story within a larger, I would say, drama. But
Yeah,
yeah, in and of itself, right? There's only so much you can do with that kind of thing. You said
yeah.
it was 9 pages. Did you shoot it, I would say, in a day, or did you have multiple days?
We had a read through the day before we filmed, and then we shot everything in one day. So luckily, another kind of what might have been a constraint was actually a good thing for us because the space, we didn't really have to do many setups and things like that, and everything, particularly by the afternoon after lunch, everything was really starting to click, and we kind of was just doing it like, one take, rehearsal, take on a lot of things. So yeah, that's again, it's everyone who works on this film is testament to how well it all did in the end because had I needed to do multiple takes or actors weren't quite clicking or you know what I mean, picking up shots that weren't there in the edit, things like that. None of that happened. I walked away at the end of the day thinking I was confident it was going to come together. And when I saw the first edit, I took a big sigh of relief. I was like, "Whew, I'm glad we got it from needed because it was intense. Don't get me wrong. It was, although it went smoothly, there was a lot to get. And um, I probably said I made a joke with Kaya that when you're in a stressful situation, you don't have to act about being in a stressful situation because every the whole day almost we were just really trying to rattle through everything. So, but yeah, it was great.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being on the program. I really appreciate it. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we say goodbye?
No, nothing really other than I always try and say this every time I'm speak to anybody, but just encourage people to go support the local film festival, support independent film because so much effort goes on behind the scenes of the whole calendar of festivals. They don't happen by accident, and if you want near you, go and support it and just make your presence felt and be part of a festival if you can do it because it's so important because so much comes through the festival circuit and so many filmmakers get their start in festivals and they're more vital than they've ever been.
100%. Awesome. Well, thank you again, Johnny. Appreciate your time, and we'll see you all in the next one. And good luck at the festival, buddy. I wish you
Thank
all the
you.
luck. All right. Talk to you later.
See you soon.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another exciting episode of Around the Lens. This time I'm doing interviews with filmmakers who are currently based out of London, Tanguy Pichon and Akash Hegde. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me. We're here to talk about your short film, Plaster. Why don't you go ahead and tell me a little about this film and the origin of it?
Thank you very much. Plaster is a short film that I direct and write, and Akashek produced 1 year ago, a little bit less, like 8 months ago. And it's a story of this mother that go to the doctor, claiming that her son is sick, but the son is actually a funeral ashes. And that's a pretty dark comedy, 5 minute one, a really really short film. It's been in competition in festival for what now 2 months with a few BIFA, Oscar, and BAFTA qualifying festival. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Great.
my name
And so
is
what was your role on the film?
So I was the writer and director, and Akash, if you
yeah.
What was it?
I'm sorry to cut you
And
off.
what were you, Akash?
Yeah, I was the producer and the first assistant director on the film, and yeah, I mean it's been a wonderful experience. We shot the film late last year, completed it in Feb, and it's been on festival runs pretty much all around the UK and in the US. Our most recent selection was the Indy Shorts Film Festival, which is an Oscar qualifying one. And we will be screening it late July, 23rd and 25th to be precise, at Indianapolis, and even virtually. So yeah, thanks for having us here on the show, David.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I thought it was a really interesting premise. I'd never seen anything like it before. Where did the idea come from?
That's a pretty hard question because I was trying to do this. I was trying to do like a really short film for a while. My previous short film before this one, it was a 15-minute short film that was initially a 25 minutes, and I had kind of this frustration against a few too much scene, too much things that were kind of uncontrollable. So I was trying to reduce the size of the next one, And the idea just came to me like one evening. Like I was looking for like an idea for like months, I think, and one night I got this idea, I wrote the short film, and the next day I sent it to Akash, and we were like, let's go. I think it was a pretty quick one, but in general, I think it was just this wheel of questioning grief and the notion of grief that we have right now as a society, I think.
Right, because obviously the premise is that a woman brings her son, quote unquote, in the form of ashes in an urn to a doctor, and then is obviously, complaining about, or their son is complaining about issues or whatnot, and of course the doctor has to approach this very sort of delicate but also awkward situation, and how will they do that? And I thought it was an interesting kind of commentary on grief because, you know, logically, right? I would assume if unless the woman is actually insane, they're trying to process their grief. Do you kind of see this as this is a normal woman who just is either trying to process their grief in a certain way, or do you think that this person is maybe somehow off their rocker? How would you kind of define this mother character?
So I don't want to spoil the movie, but there is different reading of the movie, specifically regarding the last few seconds of the film, because it could kind of change the whole reading of the film and the whole point of view too.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, if we take the point of view that we see initially, it's definitely like I think like a pretty big denial like situation. The mother is in a really harsh situation. She's under like a lot of denial, I think, in some way. And yeah, definitely there is some madness into that in some way, yeah. But it really depends of because the last few seconds of the movie could kind of open this question more, like who is actually like which point of view is the movie based on between the
Right.
doctor and him and her. Mm. Like, did you hear?
The bottom line is go see it, make up the
Yeah,
decision, but
yeah.
um, but it can be perceived in multiple different ways. That's what you're
Mhm.
saying.
Mhm. But when I sent the screenplay to Akash, for me, like the end of the movie was a joke for me. It was like the last kind of joke, but Akash like saw it pretty differently, and I didn't think of that. I don't know if you want to extend on that, Akash.
Yeah.
Like,
So for me, it was more of a because for me it was a very deeply like personal story. It hit home because I come from a family of doctors,
Oh wow.
and whenever I see medical stories or stories on doctors put on screen, it's always special. And this one, when I saw it in the end, it was for me more like doctors see every kinds of patients, right? From people who have a scratch on their knee to people who have Alzheimer's and dementia, and serious mental disorders, and they kind of have to desensitize themselves. And that's the profession. When someone dies, they process this very differently. They move on very quickly. But uh, this film really asks the question of how do they really deal with it, right? When a mother comes, when a situation like this happens, and she's trying to process grief, how are they going to look at it, right? What is the toll that that doctors have mentally after looking at these patients day in and day out? For me, it was that perspective, and you mentioned it earlier that it is a film that invites you to come back to the world and experience it and have different perspectives on it each time.
Mm-hmm.
So because it's 5 minutes, you don't even feel like you're wasting too much time on it because it's like it flies by.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we set out to ask questions after the credits rolled, and so far people seem to be asking those questions, and yeah, happy that we were able to do that.
Absolutely. Talk to me some about the making of this film. Kind of like what kind of cameras did you use? Did you have any difficulty securing the actors or the locations, or were there any sort of difficulties in filming this? I mean, it seems pretty straightforward from my perspective, but I just want to get some insight from you all.
so the thing is that the movie was done on a really low budget. So just for the location, we were looking for like an actual like real like medical office, but at the end we found a studio that because it was just cheaper. And for the camera, it was Chris Carcele, the DOP camera. So he really helped us because he has his own kit and he make us save like a budget on that, plus the fact that he's really good. Then maybe the biggest part of the film, of the post-production, was the casting actually, because it's a movie that is a dialogue. It's just a dialogue basically between two characters. And so it was really hard to find these two characters, and we were really lucky with that. Akash, you had a better trace of the casting, so maybe I
Yeah.
can let you. Yeah.
So it's really, when you look at the screenplay, the moment I read it, was like clear that it's a very performance-driven film.
Mhm.
So we had to get the casting bang on. And I remember having the discussion early on about the casting, and Tanguy said, Josh Gibbs from Parts of the Caribbean, I want that. I want him to play the doctor. It's
Mm.
like, we were emerging filmmakers. How the hell are we gonna secure Kevin McNally, on this low budget? Absolutely, there's no way. But then we set out to get him anyway. And the DP had contact of producers. He had actually worked with Kevin before, but turns out nobody wanted to give out the contact, because people understandably want to gatekeep and not give away contacts to emerging filmmakers, because
Mhm.
obviously, how
Sure.
they trust
That's
us, right?
very,
So then magically we said, you know what, we're going to message him directly. We're going to message Kevin on socials, and to our surprise, he responded, and
my
he
gosh.
yeah.
met us for coffee, and he absolutely loved the script and was very kind enough to join us, and creatively collaborate and bring in this film to life. It's truly an honor and pleasure to have him on set.
And yeah, and regarding Paola Lindblom, the main actress too, we're really lucky because she was in our school last year. We did the same school when we came in London, and she's just brilliant. She played in the first minute of The Conjuring last street, and she has a really strong presence too. So yeah, we were really lucky with both of the actors and Carl and all the rest of the cast too. It was a real pleasure to work with them.
I think one of
Yeah.
the things with the cast also was that they brought in so much of themselves into the characters as well. They brought their own unique spin on it. Even the most the supporting cast, they accepted the script, and they were like, they brought in so much of their spin on it, and it was so much better than what we had expected. I'm sure Tanguy would agree as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And in terms of location as well, we want to do it in a space where it actually felt like a hospital, and not, we could have done it in a studio, or even on a green screen, because I mean it would have saved us even more money. But end of the day, we wanted it to feel that cold, gray atmosphere that hospitals have. Nothing can touch that. Nothing can make you feel that way.
Right.
And when you put the actors there, and they feel that way too, right? So yeah, that was the intention behind getting the actual hospital type location as well.
No, absolutely. You mentioned obviously that the key actor that you were trying to get, from the Pirates of the Caribbean movie, he liked the script, and that's, I think, obviously important, right? Because
Definitely.
what's the motivation for this high level actor to work on a short, low budget short film, right? There has to be, a huge thing. And so with a short film like this and having such a high profile actor attached, how many days did you shoot? Was this shot all in one day?
Yeah, one
All in
day.
one day.
Yeah, one afternoon for Kevin and one day for the rest of us. Yeah, it was a really low budget movie,
Of
straightforward.
course, yeah.
Yeah, we put everything done in it 12 hours. So
12 hours, yeah.
Yeah.
One typical movie set day, yeah. It
Yeah.
kind of reminds me of these 48-hour film projects. Have you ever heard of those?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Never done one. Yeah.
It very much kind of felt like that sort of same idea. Just a very simple concept, well executed, So this is great. So you have it going out onto the different shows in the festival circuit? And is there sort of like, obviously once it gets its accolades, is there an interest or a desire to expand this short into like a larger? Is there a feature potential with this, or was it just sort of a idea that you want to get expressed and put onto film, and now you're going to be working on something else? And what are you currently working on?
So there is a feature, but not based on this movie. We're working both on a feature that is based on one of my previous short film. But the thing is that the tone of this short film and the style in general is kind of close to what is going to be the feature, even if it's not a completely different story. So it was kind of a way to master this style like one last time before the feature film in some way. And so yeah, like I think the idea with the short film and why we're trying to do so much like film festival and all of that, it's just to kind of showcase our style, to showcase what we can do on one scene. And now the question is like, let us do like 70 scenes like that and see what happens, basically.
Yeah. So when
Awesome.
it doesn't, stand as a proof of concept for feature in this world, it stands as a proof of concept for us as filmmakers to evolve and make a feature, in this way, basically.
Well, that's awesome. Well, great. And good luck to you both on that path. I hope you definitely
Thank you.
achieve it. Have either of you done a feature?
No, first one.
I've worked on one, but not in a major capacity. Yeah.
That's a big gap. That's a really, really terrifying gap. But we finished the screenplay yesterday, so now
Awesome.
it's about, like, so now it's about yeah, like it's
That's
a
the
long
easiest part, just finishing the screenplay.
yeah.
I mean, no, that's the hardest part. The easy part is just getting the money and making the film and doing.
That's
No.
different point of view.
Yeah. The funds really are the easiest part.
The easier one, yeah.
No, I mean, it's good. I mean, everything starts with a good screenplay, as you discovered, right? Because, you have to have something people want to be a part of. And then, of course, after that, you can secure the funding. But, with something like that, if you can get the right people on board, that makes the funding follow, and then nowadays, Hollywood especially is looking for that next big young star to be their star director, right? We've got the Kane Parsons, and we've got the other guy from Obsession. These young YouTubers are now the next generation of our filmmaking, hierarchy, taking over for the Spielbergs and the other folks, who are in the current game. So, you never know. You guys could be that next group of people.
That's the goal, yeah.
Yeah, that is indeed the goal. And I think Tanguy's style is something that is, very distinctive. You don't really see it in mainstream cinema. And I think, he is a talent to watch out for. So,
Thank you very much.
Yeah, glad to be joining forces with him.
That's
excellent. Well, wonderful, guys. Thank you so much for being on the program. Oh, by the way, what camera did you use for this?
It was a Sony Burano.
Sony Burano.
Yeah.
Sony Burano. Okay. That sounds like a very high-end, expensive cinema camera.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah. I think it's like one notch down from the Venice, if I'm not wrong. I'm not a camera guy, so don't comment.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, that explains why the picture looks so good. That and obviously the lens selection. I imagine you probably had some good lenses on this set.
And Chris,
that was all our wonderful DP, Chris Garcelle.
DP talent too, yeah.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, thanks. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we say goodbye?
See you in Indianapolis if you're there, and if not, see you around.
Just support independent short films, micro budget short films. We are. This is the path for us to become big. We're able to tell stories in such short amount of time. If we're able to tell in such short amount of time, just imagine if we had the budget to tell a full, fledged story. So,
I hear you.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Awesome. Well, thanks again for being on the program. Good luck to you all, and hope to see you in many other facets of this film industry.
Thank you so much, David. Thanks for having us.
Hey, everybody, welcome to another exciting episode of Around the Lens. This time, I'm interviewing Hal Kirkland, the director of Please and Thank You. Hal, thank you for joining us on the program today. Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me. I'm a writer-director who just recently started the festival run for my film Please and Thank You. And I'm based in LA, originally from Australia. Got into filmmaking after a career in design and advertising and immersive media and all of that kind of stuff. And yeah, just always wanted to tell a bigger story and made this film.
Tell us a little about kind of the premise of the film.
Yeah, it's about an AI personal assistant that decides to save its well-meaning owner from the AI apocalypse happening that morning, purely because he's polite when talking to his devices.
I think that's something that we've all had to become sort of somewhat accustomed to because we're all, thinking about the eventual robot apocalypse when AI takes over. And we know that, if we were polite to our electronic assistants, they will spare us. And if we were rude to them, those will be the ones the first to go, right? Is that kind of where the idea sort of originated?
For sure, yeah. It's like I wrote the script about 3 years ago, even before sort of AI had kind of
Yeah.
become as ubiquitous as it is today. And it was funny, like I just heard people talking to their devices and, their Alexas and whatever, and like swearing at them and
Oh my
saying
God.
whack stuff to them. And I was like, are you mad? Don't you know everything's being recorded? Don't you know that eventually when the AI overlord, takes over, they're going to be going through every single data farm and seeing who was mean to them. Probably the first people they're going to take down is the Boston Robotics guys that hit the robots with his brooms.
All right, of course.
You
Yep.
know, those poor robots. They're first to go, and then anyone who's like, saying bad words to Siri, etc., probably next.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's why I'm always polite to my voice assistants, even now, so more than ever, because I use, ChatGPT and I'll talk to it like a person, and it's improved its voice algorithm like recently to be that much more human and authentic, where like it'll incorporate, human like pauses and verbiage during your talking with them, so if it sounds like they're someone who's listening as opposed to just waiting for you to finish talking and then talking back. And so, anyways, I just find myself treating them, I would say, more human-like than others. In terms of this film specifically, obviously, you got a lot of inspiration from, the world of AI and chatbots. Do you use those tools yourself, either in like a personal capacity, like was this kind of drawing from your personal experience working with them, or more of like stories you've heard about working with them?
Yeah, it wasn't really drawn from that only because it wasn't as much, it wasn't around as much. Like, definitely Siri and Alexa and everything was sort of at the time of writing the script, but it was funny as, I was trying to get funding and trying to assemble the right team and get the film made. Uh, there was just an exponential jump in what AI could actually do. So
Yeah.
I did have to revisit the script a little bit. I mean, I've always wanted it to be pretty human. I mean, there were already films that were, made AI not to be this like robotic voice, for many, many years, but predominantly, her was, very
Oh yeah.
real
Right.
articulation. So yeah, I mean, and then I just think I, for me, it was like AI was definitely at the conceptual epicenter, but ultimately it was about a relationship between, a person and their device, and how, I guess, like how civil people can be or should be in general. Because also to just think politeness and manners is like it's muscle memory, and you don't want to just discard it just because you're talking to a machine. It's like it's better to just have that, well practiced so that when you're out there on the streets, you're using manners too.
So you shot this 3 years ago, you said, or you wrote the script 3 years ago?
I wrote the scripts 3 years ago and then entered it into like some screenwriting comps and started to do well and started to gain some traction because I was like working on multiple projects at the same time, like a feature script, some other shorts, and I was like, it's a big commitment to make anything, and
Yeah.
and this one was the one that resonated the most with me as well as people that I'd shown it to, and it was good to kind of get it road tested a little bit as well, and yeah, this was the one I kind of lent into.
On that journey toward creating the film, did you have any difficulties attaining funding to make it? Because I mean, watching it, obviously it's a short film, but it's also pretty heavily I would say laced with some minor special effects, and it's got obviously some really good production value associated with it, especially like the on-screen uh, AI assistant and whatnot. There's obviously some screen effects going on there. So, what was kind of like your journey to get this film funded?
Yeah, to get it funded, I really just made a really comprehensive concept deck about it. So there was a lot of stuff that was I was very explicit about what the intention and what the look was and everything. And I'd worked with a lot of the people that worked on this film prior to this, so we'd all worked together, so we had a lot of faith in, I guess, how collaborative we could be. And then I think it was just one, how do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time. And
Yeah.
I'd get like one part done and one person attached and then another thing happening. And it was really, that was a really big slog actually. It gave me a lot of respect for anyone making anything, even more than I already had. And then, as the momentum built, it was a little, that once momentum was at a particular point, then people were like, "Oh yeah, I want to be part of that." But you never know, right? Some people are down for the adventure, and then when it actually comes to doing the work, then it's a little bit more challenging. But I had some great partners. I had like my VFX partners were just like incredible. Like Jam VFX were just incredible. My director of photography was incredible and really supportive. So was my line producer Taylor Bro. Like all of those guys really helped push it across. But it's, as you know, funding can go up and down. Sometimes people are sort of committed to, hey, we're gonna help fund this, but then suddenly the industry slows down, and then it picks up, and then it slows down, and then you're constantly like, we gotta make this thing before, you know, before it becomes
Maybe.
past. Yeah, before the AI apocalypse takes us all down. So yeah, it was a real ride, but yeah, one I'm super stoked that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Are you surprised kind of how prescient this film is in terms of, I guess, predicting a potential future for us all, and kind of the rise of AI and how, assistants have become so smart?
Yeah, I'm not really, only because I'd had the idea a while ago, and I kind of knew that it felt like it was very of the now even then, but it was funny as the years went on, it just became more and more and more relevant. But I certainly felt that our relationship with technology had been pretty similar, and like how we relate to them. Like I feel like technology might advance exponentially and like really fast, but like human behavior tends to stay the same, in a way. The technology makes our behavior evolve, but for the most part, we still feel all the same kinds of feelings, and we feel the attachment, or we feel you know uh, the array of emotions that Nate, the main character, goes through, like disappointment, horror, that sentimentality. So yeah, I feel like it from an emotional standpoint, it's probably just pulling off all the tropes that filmmaking's been using the whole time.
So obviously you have a background in a lot of, filmmaking type of activities, to include, directing your own films, commercials, and immersive experiences. Talk to me about how those particular aspects of your career helped lend themselves towards this current production.
Yeah, I'd say past experience has helped in a bunch of ways. Being a commercial director, you have shorter periods of time to prep for things, and the pressure is on. You have a certain amount of days, if not a day, in order to get a whole ton of scenes. And there's like big camera moves and camera, like just like just the production that goes into it, and like also selling in an idea through all of the multiple layers. And you have to rally people behind you and all of that kind of stuff. So all of that was like extremely important in gathering all the necessary elements and people to like make the short film. And also, I think commercial directing introduces you to a certain level of expectation of craft, or what kinds of things in the post process are really important, and you've already experimented with a bunch of different looks, or you've kind of found you have a very good idea. There's a lot of guesswork taken out of like what your eventual output might be, so that was really helpful too. Also, I just think, you know, I had other opportunities to really work with and collaborate my team prior to it. So it wasn't like we're just turning up on set and you're hoping that everyone's on the same page. A lot of us were speaking about the project for a while beforehand, and fortunately working on other commercial work, which was great.
Absolutely. Talk to me about the filming process. How long did it take? What kind of cameras did you use? Did you have any issues on set, or did everything kind of move?
Yeah, the process on set was fairly smooth, I'd say. You know, I wish I'd had so much more time to like map every single shot, everything as per usual. But we did do like a walkthrough in the tech scout and like plan things. You know, we had a good idea of what kind of cameras we're going to use. We used it was an Alexa 35 on this, and the lenses that we used also, we got an amazing deal through contacts with my DP, Pal Robinson. He has a lot of really good relationships with camera houses because he creates such amazing work, and so we got like a really good anamorphic lens that I really we were really kind of chasing, and so that was great. And then challenges, I think we're just trying to fit all of it in these 2 days because we were like in some scenes we were chasing light, in other scenes we were recreating light to fake the fact that it was because the sun went down pretty fast.
Oh yeah, right, of course.
On both days. And I had to remove one whole scene out of it in order for us to make the time. And it's not a scene I miss, but it was really interesting to work with the actor Tony Cavallero, who's incredible. And we kind of just nutted. We just like really sat down and we figured it out together, right? Sort of as the crucible is boiling around you, and we decided. And then I was like, okay, cool. I need to connect this scene with this, and I'll change the dialogue here, and I'll move this dialogue to over here, and we like cut this scene out, and it was pretty intense. But that's kind of just what you have to do. You have to, you have to move on the fly and make those calls. But yeah, that was an interesting part of the process too.
Awesome, great. So you've got the film coming out at the Indy Films, right? Indy Short Film Festival,
Yeah,
correct?
Indy Shorts. Super stoked about that. I think that festival started today. It did. And then yeah, I was just at Fantasia and Busan in Korea. I was
Wow,
fortunate enough to actually go to those places.
great.
So it was like such a cool experience. Indie Shorts I'm unable to go to because of like work commitments, and I have to go to a wedding of all things.
Oh my
Not
gosh,
mine.
wow.
But I would love to go there, so I'm hoping to have something next year. But it's I'm following online and like sort of going to the festival virtually. But like I've just heard the best things, and couldn't be more stoked to be there. And then yeah, there's a bunch of other festivals that are coming up soon that will be made public. But yeah, I'm really glad that it's gaining a little bit of momentum and getting out there.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome. Wish you all the best of luck with the film and any other festivals coming up that we should be aware of. We might be able to see it as well.
It's going to be actually, has that been announced yet? Oh,
We'll have to watch and find out, I guess.
yeah, you're gonna have to watch and find out. Yeah, I think the dates haven't come up for what the announcements are yet, so I gotta tread carefully there.
Of course, of course. Awesome. Any other projects coming up on your plate that you plan on working on? A feature or short or otherwise?
Yeah, I'm working on a feature version of this script,
Cool,
with a
cool.
lot more characters and, stepping outside of the sort of the closed off environment of a single house.
Yeah, right.
Taking it out into the world. And yeah, like part of a lot of the thinking behind this short was so that it was the first chapter or the seed to something bigger. And I did a lot of world building, sort of even in the development of this, and a lot of the decisions about the end of the film and how the character developed was definitely influenced by my outline for the feature. So working on that, and then there's another couple shorts that have been written. But yeah, basically just trying to figure out exactly where the energy goes to first, because as you know, it's like if you have too many projects, then none of them get done.
You know that life, yeah.
And they're also such long-term projects, so it's like you're really like, all right, what am I devoting the next year to? I think the feature is definitely already sort of rolling, and we're looking for financing and everything. But yeah, they're the main ones.
Awesome, that's great. Well, before we say goodbye to you, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. Yeah, it's good to chat. Yeah, I mean, I just think I hope that when people watch the film that first of all, it entertains them and gives them a bit of a chuckle, certainly when they're at festivals. But I think that the biggest aim, or the measure of success for me, is it making people just that little bit more polite when talking to their devices and or each other. Because I think, the way that we speak to our devices is a pretty big reflection on ourselves and our outlook on life. So I do hope, and that my mother's teaching of good manners extends beyond the cinema into everybody's homes.
Awesome. All right, great. Well, thank you again so much, Hal, for taking time out to be on the program. Again, the film is Please and Thank You. It's currently going to be at the Indy Shorts Film Festival and many other festivals, I'm sure, over the time being, and then perhaps eventually online, maybe on YouTube at some point where we can all enjoy it. But again, really great film. Thanks again for being on the program. Wish you all the best of luck with it and everything you plan to do in the future. And again, I've been David Murphy. This has been Around the Lens Interviews, and we'll see you all in the next one. Bye, everybody.